Alright, so now that I've got my wizard up to level 13, I wanted to show you some of the abilities that she has. This is obviously a melee wizard right now. I'm using her as a melee wizard, and I'm using Spectral Blade, which causes 3 strikes that do 35% of your total weapon damage, and it does it all in a succession. So, as you can see, it's a very melee weapon attack, but what makes it so good is the fact that it's actually quite AoE. It's that whole area right there is where it actually does the damage to. So it's actually a really good ability. I actually double it with Magic Weapon, which does an increase of physical damage by 20%, and yes, it does stack with this ability. So, but it only affects melee weapons. But it does work for in tandem with the Spectral Blade. As you can see, it does some really great damage to whatever hits it, whatever it hits. Obviously, the wizard is not traditionally supposed to be a melee attacker, but in this case, this combo actually is completely legitimate for a wizard. And so I'm also coupling the melee stuff with some defense stuff. So I've got a storm armor on her right now, and you can put either of the armors you want. There's storm armor, but there's also ice armor, and but you can't. The funky thing is you can't actually have both on at the same time. So I'll show you this. I've got storm armor and ice armor. If I equip one of them, if one of them is available, it removes the other one. So you can only have one at a time. As a result of that, the combinational logic that we've seen before from other people and the mathematics for combinations of skills is actually not quite as accurate as you might imagine because of things like that. Anyway, I don't want to go into that stuff. I also have equipped with her a diamond skin, which basically deflects, 103 damage from incoming attacks for 5 seconds. So, but the cooldown on it is 25 seconds, so you don't want to do it very often. This is one of those abilities where you want to use it when you absolutely need it. When you're about to get killed, it can be a super good lifesaver, and yeah, I really like it. So we're just going to go ahead and kill the Skeleton King right now, and I'll show you the other abilities, the more common abilities for the sorceress in a moment. Enjoy the fight. So I'm going to go ahead and use this so he doesn't hurt me. Alright. Okay, so now I'm going to trade up my skills for... what kind of a build do I want to show you? I'll show you Disintegrate build since it's a very commonly used and is really good overall. Skill combo. What do you put with it? Well, I think I will, just to show you, this is not really a combination. I'm going to show you well, it is sort of a combination. The Frost Nova plus Wave of Force is a great AoE effect, and I want to add something to this. What would be logical to add to this combo that I haven't shown you? I guess I'll just do Ice Armor since you haven't quite seen that one yet. But so Ice Armor, it is an effect just like the other armor. Whoops, I actually wanted to follow somebody. I always do that, I always mess up like that. Follow the barb. So I've got the ice armor equipped now. Whoa, slow down a little bit. So obviously, I think everybody's pretty much seen Disintegrate. Bleeds through the enemies. Does some pretty good damage overall when I have these abilities equipped. And a good common thing I like to do if there are a bunch of enemies. Of course, Frost Nova will freeze enemies, and by the way, it does work on bosses. You will actually be able to freeze bosses, which is great. And then, of course, Wave of Force just does a big boom. It does a pushback as well. Pretty good pushback. I'm impressed with the amount of pushback it does. It's good for pushing back the enemies away from you if you don't want them there. So that's pretty much this combo. It's really straightforward. There's really not a whole lot to say about it. See if I can think of anything that I may have missed about Disintegrate. It follows you. It's got a delay. It's not perfectly in line with your cursor. You have to keep that in mind when you're doing it. It has a very low mana cost overall. I mean, if you can, or arcane power cost, I should say. If you look at it, it's just barely being depleted. I mean, that's a long time to be able to hold something down. Don't look forward to this ability if you're looking for those. I forget what they call them. The stacked 1 damage. I can't even think what you call them right now. But it's basically where you use one ability to do a overloaded like many attacks in a row. I don't even know what you call it, but don't count on the Disintegrate for that because it doesn't work. It does work in some situations where if you just do it in a line, like a very short line, but then they have an algorithm in there or something that cuts it off. So you can't get that kill streak with it. That's what it's called. I think it's called a kill streak where you use one ability to kill multiple enemies. So, but what I wanted to show you with this combo is you can freeze them and then Wave of Force them. Frost Nova, really good combination. Actually kills most of the people in there. And of course, this is just cheap as crap, being able to mow down all these people. And while it's not as powerful as the straight up melee wizard I was using before, the Spectral Shard or whatever it's called, it's still it's in some ways it's way more effective because it's just a freaking laser beam. It just destroys whatever it's in its path. So yeah, that's all of these 4 abilities. The next skills I want to show you would be, of course, Tornado. You know, everybody knows Magic Missile, so I'm not going to show that one. Shock Pulse. Showed Spectral Blade. Electrocute. And let's see. I think that's all. That would be all of the beta skills so far. So let's go ahead and show you these real quick. I'm sure most of you have already seen them anyway. But just for closure's sake and have it all in one place, we have Shock Pulse, which is just like in Diablo 2, if you remember, there was also the... what was it called? Oh gosh, Electric Bolt. I can't remember what it was called, but it works exactly the same way as it was in that game. Where, well, I'll just show it to you. Shock Pulse just does little shock pulses in the ground, and it moves in random order. It just has basic direction, and then it goes wherever the hell it wants. The Electrocute ability, which is right here, shocks and then bounces off, dealing 30% less damage each bounce, and it can only bounce twice. So you have a main attacker. Well, I'll show you in a minute. I'll get you some guys over here. So it hits the main target, does its full capacity damage, and each successive target after that, it does a 30% less damage to each of those. And that's a pretty commonly used. I see a lot of people using that one. Energy Twister is probably one of the least useful just attacking skills, because it's completely random. It goes nowhere where you want it to go, and it does very little damage. Actually, I would think that because of its behavior, because it does such random behavior, like it goes basically, it just goes in the direction you went, but it doesn't go anywhere where you want it to go. Usually, it never hits the enemy. I'll try to use an example right here. So I'm just going to cast a few of these. It's also extremely expensive. You can only really cast 3 at a time. And actually, right there, it wasn't too bad because there was a whole lot of enemies in there. But Trust me, I've tried to use it before, and it's just not nearly as effective as the other abilities, and you won't see it very often in online. So, unless they change it somehow and make it a lot more powerful, I can see it being better. It is a fun skill for sure, but the amount of mana, or the amount of arcane power that it consumes, you can really only get about 4 off at a time, and it isn't quite as effective, isn't very powerful, and hits random shit. It'll go off in La La Land if you're not careful. So I'm gonna try to show you how I'm shooting it in this direction, and it's not really going where I want it to go. All of you see, all the enemies are right here. I'm shooting toward the enemies, and it's going off. It's really not all effective. Fun skill, not very effective. I'm using ice armor. Obviously, it will freeze enemies for 2 seconds. It doesn't freeze them, it just slows them down, and it's very minute, and that's why in the description it says chill them. I'm not even sure if that... It probably slows melee attack damage, but it doesn't specify exactly what it does, but I believe it just slows them for a little bit when they attack me. But it only works for melee attackers. In contrast to the Storm Armor, which I showed you before, the Storm Armor actually, when it'll attack enemies for 1 with 17 lightning damage, but it includes melee and ranged, if you wanted to. So, that's actually why I prefer it better. While it doesn't chill the enemy, it actually works on ranged enemies, which is great. And I think that's all I had to show you. Shock Pulse I showed you, Electrocute I showed you, Storm Armor is pretty awesome over the other armor. And if you're a melee wizard, you definitely want an armor on because you don't want to die. And yeah, I think that concludes all of the abilities. I didn't show you Magic Missile, but I think you all know what Magic Missile is. The problem with Magic Missile, it's not powerful enough at all for in-game because it only hits 1 target. Oh, I did forget one. Let me show you Arcane Orb. Magic Missile always reminds me of Arcane Orb. Arcane Orb is actually really good. The biggest problem with it is it's really expensive. It does good damage, and it does a wave of damage. Like, it'll blow up everything that it hits, if it hits it. But it's very, very expensive. In fact, I want to show you this combo real quick. What I like to use is actually... I don't have my melee attack on. I'm going to go ahead and report back to town, show you my melee attack. This combo is really cool. So what I do is I'll get a Spectral Blade along with the magic weapon to upgrade the damage for it, and then I'll get... What is it I got before? I want to say it was just Storm Armor. And this is a good combo. Here's why this is a great combo. I've got my Spectral Blade, I've got my Arcane Damage, I'm going to have my Constant Storm Armor. Now I need to put my attack weapon on. I want to show you the combo and how it works. So if I can find some enemies, there's probably going to be some enemies up here. I just want to show this real quick. So basically, Spectral Shard is almost costless in terms of mana or arcane power. So what I like to do is I like to shoot enemies with this orb first, and when I run out of mana, which I do after about 3 times, I'll just finish them off with this stuff. It's actually quite effective because my arcane power will regenerate while I wait for this ability to come back. They're both really great because this has range, and when I run out of arcane power, I can go up close to them and then use the Spectral Shard on them. Alright, so if you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, and I plan on doing the rest of the Witch Doctor, the other 3 classes that I have not shown all the abilities for. I will do those shortly, and I'll see you guys later.